All right, I see people still trickling in, but we are going to go ahead and get started. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Those that are here on the Zoom live, welcome. Those that will be joining and watching the recording later, thanks for being here. My name is Patty Chapman. I work in the Career Management Center here in the College of Business, and I am so excited today as we chat with the 2008 Marketing Alumni, Jason Krutzsch, for our first Tuesday talk of the spring 2023 semester. These short virtual talks aim to inspire our current students with those that have been on campus before us, and we are so excited to have Jason. Jason, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love the opportunity to reconnect.
It's awesome. Students, just a quick reminder, this session is being recorded and the recording will be posted in the Handshake resource card as well as on our College of Business YouTube account tomorrow. We only have about 30 minutes here, so if a question comes up with you during the talk, please feel free to pop it in the chat or raise your virtual Zoom hand and we can get to you. With that, let's go ahead and get started here. So Jason is Vice President, Marketing, Content, and Communications for the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission. Jason is focused on developing the brand and communication strategy for the high-profile events taking place across the LA region for over the next decade, which started with Super Bowl 54, the 2022 MLB All-Star game, and many more in between and more to come. So Jason, I know you've had a lot of experience leading up to this, and we'll go ahead and get started with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and a bit of the road that got to you where you are in your current position?
Yeah, so absolutely. So like I said, great to connect and really happy to be here and really want to make this interactive. So hopefully we'll have some moments to get to your guys' questions, but I really want to make sure that I'm spending the time just kind of answering some of the things you guys really want to know. So feel free to stop me at any point or jump, hit a question in the chat and I'll do my best to make sure we get to those. But as thank you for the tee up, Patty. My name's Jason Krutzsch. I'm the Vice President of Marketing, Content, Communications for the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission. And about 15 years ago, I was in a very similar spot to a lot of you guys, just trying to figure out, what does my career path look like? How do I get to, where I want to be? And I would sit here and say 15 years later, I think I'm still just on that journey. But it starts somewhere. And I knew where my starting point was. At one point in time, I knew that I just wanted to work in sports. I knew that was kind of like my focus while I was at CSU. I think it was my focus pretty quickly when I decided, or when I realized I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. I was like, okay, how do I stay involved in sports? And so I kind of, I think throughout my 4 years while I was in Fort Collins, it was really just trying to figure out a path to that. While I was in school, I was able to get involved in the X Games event. I started as a volunteer at the X Games event in Los Angeles the summer before my senior year. And during my senior year, I was able to get involved in a freelance kind of marketing opportunity in Fort Collins, kind of helping build awareness for the event along the Front Range. And throughout that experience, that led to a paid internship with ESPN back in Los Angeles after I graduated. And really, that was the start of my first 13 years of my career. I worked for ESPN on the X Games brand specifically, working on all their major events and content projects and quite a few different things over those years. And then in 2020, I took a new offer. September of 2020, I took a different opportunity. I left ESPN and I joined the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission, looking after the marketing and communication strategies for all the major events coming to Los Angeles over the next decade. And as Patty mentioned, we hosted the Super Bowl last year, Super Bowl 56, the Major League Baseball All-Star game in 2022. We just finished up the College Football Playoff National Championship at SoFi Stadium this past January. And then looking ahead, we're hosting WrestleMania 39, April 1st and 2nd at SoFi Stadium. The US Open of Golf is making its return to Los Angeles for the first time in 75 years and the first time ever at the Los Angeles Country Club this June. And then kind of looking bigger ahead, Los Angeles was selected as a host market for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And then also will be the host of the 28 Olympics are a lot of the things that we have on the roadmap. So it's extremely exciting time for sports in North America, for sports in Los Angeles. And that's kind of where I'm at today.
Those are some major sporting events, and that is a lot on your plate, it sounds like, coming up. Can you tell us a little bit more about the core focus of your role? What are you doing with your teams, and how does one market all of these major events? What does that look like?
Yeah, certainly. And so like there's a couple different phases for the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission, just as what we do from a business standpoint. So each one of these major events, there's a bidding cycle, like the NFL or the college football playoff team, or these different entities issue an RFP, a request for proposal. And so part of our business is to kind of gather all the pieces together to actually submit a bid to bring these major events to the market. There's also a fundraising component to make sure you can pay for them. And then where I spend the majority of my time is really kind of the fulfillment on these, the marketing, communication, and the story. How the Super Bowl, it was the first time in 29 years that we'd had a Super Bowl back in Los Angeles, the first one ever at SoFi Stadium. Really kind of how we get local businesses involved, how we make sure that the Super Bowl is going to leave a lasting legacy. And there's kind of like the different opportunities flow into different parts of the community. And all that starts, call it like 18 months to 2 years out. So there's a huge build towards the fact that, and then once, February 13th happens and the Rams lift the Lombardi Trophy, it's a great celebration of that. But it's really kind of a multi-year process just to make sure that that moment in time can happen. So I really work on a lot of that long tail storytelling and just making sure the NFL is connected to the right people in the marketplace to really do that.
Wow, it's the timeline, the buildup. I'm sure it was a really exciting time to be there in the stadium when they won that last year. That's exciting.
That was a special moment. It was a lot of work leading up to it, so it was a really nice moment to actually be there and kind of actually finally seeing, like especially in events, especially in sports, you kind of for a long time you're messaging a date and you're constantly looking ahead and looking ahead and looking ahead. And when you can actually get to that date and you actually kind of like circle it on the calendar, it's a pretty nice feeling. It's definitely a feeling of satisfaction.
Talk about a career highlight. That's exciting. So Jason, marketing is such a vast field. And you mentioned a little bit of how you landed in this area, realizing you're not going to be a professional athlete. What makes you a good fit for what you do? And how would a student might know that they're a good fit for this role in this industry, sports marketing in general? What advice do you have for that?
Yeah. I think I really like go back to passion. Like I was always passionate about sports, participation wise, also just fandom. And I knew that was just a place that I wanted to be. And I think that's always a great place for me, for just where to start is like, okay, what am I passionate about? Like, what are some of the industries that I feel like I can come in, I can, just be able to give my full effort into and really care about. And so that was a little bit how I started in that. And then I also have always just loved brands. I've loved storytelling. I've loved, when I got first started with ESPN on the X Games, it was at the early days of social media. So I started as a marketing coordinator, and really my biggest focuses at that time were making sure that people in both Los Angeles, where our summer event was, and then Aspen, Colorado, and really kind of like the larger kind of state of Colorado were aware of our winter event that took place. And so I was very focused on that in more of a traditional capacity, working with local radio partners and different activations at ski and snowboard shops or different resorts. And but at that same time, that's when social media was just becoming a thing, and people were setting up their Facebook pages, their Twitter accounts, their YouTube channels. And through all that like in-market opportunity, we started making a lot of content, and we started using content to grow fandom, and we started making content to really market the fact that these events were taking place. And through that really led me into a more content focused kind of like trajectory at the company. I got much more involved in the growth of our social media channels. And then through that, I got, in 2013, I actually took a new opportunity and moved to Bristol, Connecticut, and worked out of the ESPN headquarters. And throughout that kind of that 5-year run that I was back in Connecticut, I got a lot more involved just in our overall content strategy for a brand. So everything that we were putting on social media still, everything we were putting on our website, but then also what we were producing from a television broadcast standpoint for our live events. And then also launched a weekly TV show, World of X Games, where we were programming 48 1-hour shows on ABC throughout the year, is kind of like complementary to the larger X Games events that we were doing. So, I think I think just to go back to where you started, it's kind of like just honing in. I think, I knew that sports was a focus of mine. So how did I kind of get involved in that? I also, then I was willing to start anywhere. I was willing to start at the bottom, and I knew that I probably had some sort of a filter on what I wanted to do, but I also knew I was just looking for a foot in the door anywhere I could. And as I mentioned, I did start as a volunteer. So the summer before my senior year, my whole number one goal was just, I saw an event that I'd grown up watching that presented a volunteer opportunity that I saw in my parents' local paper. And I just signed up and went down there with the mission of meeting people. And how did I go out there? How did I shake a few hands, get an email address? And through that, I was able to meet a few people, get an email address, and I at least had somebody I could follow up on. And then that led to the freelance opportunity in my senior year while I was still in Fort Collins, which led an opportunity to go up to Aspen and meet different people from the organization, which ended up leading into the next almost 13 years of my life, kind of like living and breathing the X Games brand. And then I kind of bring it full circle. The reason I'm where I'm at today actually is because of the power of networking, that same kind of like meeting people. When I was an intern that first summer at ESPN, one of my jobs was to give tours of the X Games venue. And that's one of my tours was to the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission. And then I was able to strike up a professional relationship with the LASEC team. And almost 13 years after that kind of meeting in time, I joined the team and now working on the roadmap of major events come at LA. So it's kind of, it's wild how that happens. I wouldn't have said I'd forecasted it this way. It's just kind of like every once in a while you get a phone call that you weren't expecting and your life changes.
Talk about full circle. I love that. And especially years and years later, it's the definition of you don't know who you're going to meet.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of segues into one of my next questions. And you maybe touched on it a little bit, but this is such a competitive field industry to get into. Some marketing agencies are only hiring one person. What is one thing that you would recommend to students that they do during their time here at CSU to set them apart?
Yeah. And I see this a lot more in my current role and just the power of volunteering. Like internships are amazing. Absolutely. Like if you, I think if I had to break it down really smart, it's really small. It's kind of like make that short list. What do I want to do? Or what's interesting to me? Not even what do I want to do? And then what are some of these like pieces that I can get involved in? So if it is sports, it's starting to look at like, okay, what sports teams, leagues, media companies, like what am I interested in? What do I think I would want to do? And then I think another great thing is one outside of looking for internships is just really seeing if there's volunteer opportunities, like all these major events that are taking place in the greater Denver metro area throughout the state of Colorado, just thinking of close proximity to where everybody's going to school. There's various volunteer opportunities. And I think that's just, I didn't quite know it at the time, but how important that was to just getting me in my start. I didn't quite have that internship, but I still was kind of using those volunteer opportunities as resume building, but also network building. And I think that's just kind of like coming up with that short list of what's really interesting to you and then figuring out just small ways to get involved. And it doesn't need to be a full-time job opportunity. It can be a 2-day volunteer experience. And that's how you go network. That's how you can get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain to see how things really get done. And then that can inform you of what you might be interested in, but it can also inform you of what you're like, oh, actually, I don't really want to do that. Like that doesn't look like something I want to do. And I think you have to come up with those moments, but it's really just trying to, again, figure out those quick things that you can do, not even quick things, but just things that you can do along your path, especially while you're a student, just to, build those resume building experiences or those conversation points, because all of a sudden you do get that interview and, you might gotten that interview because of your resume, but then you can also say, hey, last year I was a volunteer for 2 days at this event. And then you'd be like, oh, wow, it's amazing. You've been trying at this for a while. You have a story to tell at that point.
Absolutely. And speaking of a short list of just engaging with local teams, our CSU Rams, they have an excellent marketing internship. They're actually coming to our marketing meetup next week, students. So it was supposed to be tomorrow, big snowstorm. We are rescheduling it. So just FYI, they will be at the meetup. They're excellent to talk to about this kind of stuff as well. Which is super exciting. Great internship program. I actually was an intern for CSU athletics back in my day as well. Yeah. So I could talk to Jason here all day, but I want to take a moment and invite any student questions in. Students, if those of you that are on the call live with us, if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself or just pop it in the chat. And we will open it up to students here for a minute. Okay, I see one in the chat, Jason, from Lauren. How did you work your way up the ladder at LASEC?
Yeah, I think it really, so I think it goes back to like, in my mind, when I started, I just wanted to do anything. Like, I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I wanted an opportunity, and I was willing to really kind of take, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in sports, but like, to get into that field, I was really looking, exploring at all these different avenues, just knowing that that was the passion I had. I would say that the way that I've been able to be successful in my career is, one, just making sure you understand the team dynamic. I was always just trying to be aware of how things got done, who the leaders are in the company, pick the right people to pay attention to that are moving up the ladder that you want to aspire to. And then whenever the opportunity presents itself, raise your hand. Like, I just always wanted to get involved and figure out how to grow my experience. So I think it's a little bit of, there's a patience to it. It definitely doesn't happen overnight. Don't be afraid to start at the bottom as far as volunteer, intern, coordinator, these entry level roles, and then just figure out how to deliver impact within your role throughout the way. And then over time, you'll grow, you'll get great experience, and you'll be qualified for those promotions.
It's a great question, Lauren. Anyone else on the line here? I have plenty more that I'm curious to know, but Abby?
Yes, I have a question. Jason, thanks for speaking to us. This is a super cool industry and such a cool role. And like, what a cool trajectory too, from just volunteering to like getting that entry level role and then networking your way up. That's awesome. I'd be curious. So this industry, like sports marketing, is changing constantly. I'm curious where you kind of see it going and how students can prepare for any changes in the industry or any trends that you see.
Yeah. Sports in general is changing. The whole marketplace is changing. It's changing quick. Like I quickly mentioned, when I first started at ESPN, like, that's when social media was like really becoming a thing, and brands were, it wasn't a full embrace originally. It was there was a growth to that, and it took a long time. And now 15 years later, you're like, wow, look at it where it's at now. It's just changed a lot. And so I think we're moving in a similar fashion, just, technology. I also think content is now the way that most everybody is marketing. Like, every brand has a content platform that they're publishing on, be it the social media handles, their website. It becomes like this new front door opportunity for them. I think just from a skill set, especially in the marketing field, just being able to understand content, being able to understand how to work with content, being able to kind of create good content for various different channels, being that a advertisement, being that a Instagram post, and just understanding the power of those different verticals is a really good one. At the end of the day, the tools are going to continue to change. The platforms are going to continue to evolve. So there is always need to stay up on those things. But I think at the end of the day, good brands are telling good stories. And just, you always have to come back to having a really great story, and then making sure that your story is complemented by the tools that people are using to engage with. And so I don't know what the future is going to unveil. A lot. I can guarantee that. And I'm just kind of like, I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly trying to make sure I'm up to speed on those things, but then also just making sure that from our brand standpoint, what's the best story we can tell in the marketplace, and making sure that that content that we are producing for that story is distributed correctly.
The trends and ever-growing social media platforms are just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's insane, but also it's wild to think of what the future could hold. Okay, Jason, it looks like there's a couple more here in the chat from Brandon. What are the most crucial steps that you took to get to your position? You may have touched on this, but were there any of those early career steps that were most pivotal to get to where you are?
You know what, I'm trying to jog my memory back to those moments, because there's always the uncertainty. Like, there's plenty of uncertainty. Like, I think now I can look back in 15 years and be like, oh wow, like, that's come together. And I think there has to be just a trust in that process that hey, it really starts with kind of like that look in the mirror, like, what do I want to do? Like, where do I want to start? And then figuring out kind of like unapologetically, not just in like just going after that. Like, I remember just there's a moment in time my senior year of college when I got offered a full-time job. My parents thought it was the greatest thing ever. And then I went back to them and told them, I was just like, I'm not going to take that. I'm going to take this 3-month part-time internship with ESPN working on the X Games for like minimum wage. And they just couldn't comprehend it. But I just knew I had to be unapologetic about the path I wanted to take. And thankfully I was able to piece it together. And it kind of like it set me on that path. Not everybody's going to have that same luxury. I understand that. But I think it's just making sure that you guys are in a position right now. There's so much information at your fingertips, like the power of networking on platforms like LinkedIn. You can just like literally just make that short list of like, hey, these are 15 companies I'd like to work with. These are 15 things these are industries that I'm interested in. And then you just start peeling back the layers on just finding a moment in time to get involved in some capacity with those things. And I think that was a little bit of my crucial step, was not necessarily listening to the advice I got on like the more safe route, and taking the risk that I knew was the right in my gut. Like, I didn't know where that was going to lead me. I didn't know that was going to lead me to the next 12 years of my career, but I knew deep down inside that I wouldn't be satisfied if I didn't make that leap and figured out how to, I'd scrap together, and it was not glamorous for a couple of years, but I was willing, and it kind of put me on the trajectory I wanted to be on.
Taking a risk on yourself and looking at where you are now, it's inspiring to these students.
Absolutely.
Okay, Riley has in the chat, what non-sports experience and involvement is best for selling yourself to those in the industry?
Non-sports. I think everybody has a story to tell. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at in your career, or what you've done necessarily. And I think just being very confident in the story that you're telling, just like who you are, what you believe in, the experience you're getting by being a student. You guys are all doing an amazing job of getting experience being students right now. And so just being able to articulate that to a hiring and somebody that's hiring or you're looking to get involved with is just important. And, I don't want to like make story just seem so kind of broad, but I think just being able to articulate who you are and why you want something, or why you're qualified for something, or how you can bring value to their organization is just an important thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
I don't know if hopefully that wasn't too bad for you, but just be confident in the experience that you're getting, be confident in what you're putting on your resume, and just being able to sell yourself when you have the opportunity to sell yourself.
Absolutely. And relatable skills, transferable skills from something can transfer easily over to other things. So yeah, that's great advice as well. So Jordan is saying, how does the group you work with innovate and create ideas for new projects and events? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so when working on events, I think it always starts with a calendar in my mind, and you kind of circle that date that the event is actually going to happen. And depending on what your lead time is, I think in my mind, it's like figuring out what those milestones are from the date you announce the event until the event happens. And you do that for all these events. And then all of a sudden you have a pretty like robust calendar of like what's taking place. And I think the events like right now, if I had to think about my current spot, we did this for Super Bowl, we did this for CFP, and now we're about 3.5 years out from hosting the FIFA World Cup in Los Angeles. And so we are kind of getting into that like longer lead planning of like, what's the 3-year story between now and 2026 for the marketplace. There's various major soccer events happening. There's 3 professional teams playing in the city. So there's a lot of moments that you can grab around, but really, I think it starts like in my mind, a lot of my creative process starts on a calendar, and you're like, how much timeline do you have the event? How much timeline do you have to ideate? And how much time do you need to make some of these ideas actually happen? And so I think that's where a lot of our brainstorms start. And then I think the ideas just kind of blossom. And then eventually you're out there trying to figure out how much budget it's going to take to actually bring them to life. And yeah, and I think that's all fun of it. I mean, I think when you have time, the ideas are endless, and especially if there's you can figure out a path to pay for them. You can do quite a bit with just a small brainstorm.
All right, Jason Morgan is saying, when you market big events such as the World Cup, are there guidelines you have to follow, or do you have complete creative freedom? Are there any challenges that come with that?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, no, there's absolutely. I think any of these major events, it's a partnership, and you're kind of acting on behalf of the major event. So at the end of the day, it's their IP in most situations. So it's their brand, and really you're trying to be a conduit to them on how they can activate across the marketplace. So just kind of thinking about it very much as a partnership, and sure, it brings some challenges because you don't have creative, like there isn't like a full creative. I am not that brand, but I have the ability to help them understand various ways to activate across the marketplace. So absolutely. And I think that's all part of the relationship. That's all part of building a strong team, and you become a really strong extension of their team in the marketplace who's here and lives and breathes it, and kind of can help guide them in the best way possible.
Nice. All right, we're closing in on our time. Are there any final questions here from the live audience? Love to hear them. I wish we could have all day with Jason. I have one final one, and if there's any more student ones, that's totally fine. But Jason, what is one quality or skill that students can develop that you see the best people in your industry that they possess?
Yeah, I think this one always comes back to is just be a good communicator, be a good writer, be a good listener, be a good, when you have the moment to present your ideas, just make sure you can clearly and concisely articulate that. And I think when I think about the people who have been the strongest leaders in my career, the people who have made the biggest impact, I always felt like they were just really strong communicators. They had the ability to just captivate an audience with their ideas, and then the kind of like the work ethic to show people how it got done. And I think it's kind of like an undervalued or maybe underthought of trait at times, but I think it's extremely important. The amount of written communication we do these days between email and instant messaging and text messaging, and it's crucial. And then being able to get into a room like this in a Zoom type setting and being able to, just have a conversation and really kind of like just make sure that your point's getting across squarely is crucial in today's marketplace. So I think just like I kind of go back to just make sure you are constantly, focusing on being a good communicator. And I think that will lead you in a really strong direction.
It is excellent advice. That Business 300 writing course, it is an excellent course. I know it's a tough one for a lot of students, but it is one of the most used business courses that I think I've ever taken. So yes. All right. Well, Jason, we so appreciate your time and thank you for being here. You're out of sunny, well, I don't know if it's sunny out there right now.
It is.
Southern California. We're expecting a snowstorm here, but just wanted to say thank you. And if you're looking to connect, follow up with Jason, the best way to do that, build your LinkedIn, connect with Jason on LinkedIn. He also will be hopefully a new Flash mentor within our new Flash mentoring program, which is just quick, almost informational interviewing type of questions, connections. So we will have more information about our Flash mentoring coming soon. So Jason, any final words?
No, thank you guys for having me. It was really fun to reconnect here, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story. And as you just heard, like, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to be a resource, happy to help answer any questions or follow-ups. And again, just enjoy the process. Is kind of sometimes as I don't know, uneasing as that can be, but just know that just keep working in the right direction, the direction you want to go, and great things will happen. So I look forward to seeing all the great success from this group.
Well, great. We are so lucky to have awesome alumni and people to connect with. So thank you, Jason, and have a fantastic rest of your day, everybody.